is going on, everybody? Fresh off of that incredible Zorro episode last night. An episode that captured everything Goat Raw Fire and Peak that this series can potentially achieve under the right circumstances. We've seen it time and time again in the way that it's been handled both in the manga and the anime. And last night we saw that on full display with the right-hand man and the king of the pirates, the future world's strongest swordsman, Roronoa Zoro, man. That junk was hype. It was crazy. But we'll talk about that at a different time. Because today, we are here to talk about someone very special. Today, we're here to talk about the mother of dragons. Today, we're here to talk about the protector of the seven kingdoms. The Khaleesi. The one who was the promised lady of Dragonstone. Had people kneeling down on one knee, spreading the seas like it's Kiryu, the dragon of Dojimon Yakuza. Introducing Queen Lily of House Nefeltari. I thought St. J. Garcia Saturn had me stressing. When your name within this series is Queen Lily of House Nefeltari, you're automatically an S-tier character. Automatically. I don't have to know what you've done. I don't have to know what type of character you are. I don't have to know what happened in the Void Century. Just off of the name, the Conqueror's Hockey nearly knocked me out to the point to where I know this character is a legend. And then it's the very first thing to come out of Instant Messenger-sama's mouth? Come on, man. I'm ready. Let's get right into the comments this week. But before that, I want to discuss a few things that were added by the Viz Translation to the conversation in regards to two specific things. The first one is the Viz Translation for the Phantom Room speculation that we've had. Obviously, we were talking about what the Phantom Room could be. If it could be the Flower Room in the midst of Pangea Castle, or could it be the Chamber Room that has, where a lot of it's frozen over. We have the giant straw hat down there. What exactly is this Phantom Room, right? So in the Viz Translation, it states something they shouldn't have, like what? The Lost Chamber. So in the Viz Translation, rather than calling it the Phantom Room, it's the Lost Chamber, and of course, following it somewhere in the middle is like the Phantom Chamber Room, right? And if we're led to believe that is to be the case, then if it is the chamber that's at the bottom of the Marijoa, the one where Instant Messenger-sama had to take that long route down there just to see the giant straw hat, it's like, all right, first and foremost, who made their way down there that caused all of the guards to move over there? And apparently this is an incident that's happened multiple different times, right? So it's like, who went through it this time? Does this mainly happen during reveries when all the kings get together and they get curious? And they start roaming around and they find it? Or did someone come here with the specific mission of trying to find what was down there in that chamber? So it's very, very interesting. Very, very interesting. So actually, let me go ahead and look back on chapter 908 real quick. So actually, let me go back to 908 and 906 real quick. So in chapter 906, at the end of the chapter, we cut over, right, and we just see Marijoa, right? No real inclination as to what this room could potentially be called. It's just opening this thing, going down here into the deepest portions here. It looks absolutely insane, right? But it truly does look like a forgotten piece of the Marijoa, a place that's just been stashed away. So it's like, who would have access or the knowledge of such a thing existing? So, but then this is where it gets really interesting as well. According to the Viz Translation, once again, the room that Instant Messenger Sama's in is referred to as the Chamber of Flowers. So that one is actually, by title, a chamber. And so I wonder, we're talking about a lost chamber, one that people are not allowed to go into. Now, I'm even more so down the middle of like, okay, are we talking about the thing down at the bottom with the giant straw hat? Or this lost chamber of flowers? Because here's the thing. Obviously, this is where we've seen Instant Messenger Sama the most. So therefore, there has to be something on the outside that is prohibiting individuals from entering this place. The God's Knights, maybe something that like says, oh, there's nothing in here, or whatever, right? But regardless, this place is not open for individuals to enter. You saw how shocked they were in this chapter to see that Imu presented themselves before Cobra. So it's like, this Chamber of Flowers may as well be the lost room that they were talking about. And so we speculated on that. We came up with those two answers in the comment section whenever we did the live chat. But now, especially that we have the middle ground between the Phantom Room and the Lost Chamber, it really is making me lean towards the Chamber of Flowers. That someone found their way into the Chamber of Flowers. But if someone found their way into the bottom section, where the giant straw hat is, to me, that's even more dangerous. Because it feels like that's the one thing that Instant Messenger Sama wouldn't want anyone to see. So it's like, man, I don't know. Honestly, don't know which one would be more of a catastrophic situation. But I guess they're sort of equal at this point. I just wonder who would make their way into the chamber. Sabo hears of this. So is Sabo going to make his way? I guess we'll find out in the following chapter, right? Where he goes, right? Because Sabo's either going to make his way into the Chamber of Flowers, or he's going to go down and see the giant straw hat. Either way, it's going to be insane, because he's going to come across the Chamber of Flowers that is going to have maybe still the Shirahoshi, Luffy, and Blackbeard stuff still on the floor. So he's going to be wondering, like, what in the flying flaggers am I looking at, right? Like, Luffy's poster, Blackbeard, Shirahoshi, like, what's going on here? And maybe even coming into contact with one of the God's Knights. And so I'm very, very curious on if it really is the Chamber of Flowers or the unnamed location where the giant straw hat is, right? So we have that, which I thought is very interesting, that word, or the way that it was stated here with the Lost Chamber. But then we cut over to, now, this is the final line that are stated before we cut over to the Shirahoshi, Charlos, and all the stuff that was happening there. I'm going to read this once again in the Viz translation, because there was a bit of confusion as to who could potentially be saying something like this. Within the, whenever we were reading the TCB, I felt like this could be either coming from Cobra and or Instant Messenger Sama, which is something that some of you were speculating on as well, which did not occur to me when I was first reading the chapter. Here in the Viz translation, it sort of confirms that it is Cobra speaking. This is what Cobra states in the Viz translation. Well, you see, there is a brief 800-year-old letter that she passed down through our line of kings. Whether or not that actually could still be Imu speaking, I'll leave that up to your interpretation. For me, I'm kind of torn. Why would you ask that? Well, you see, there is a brief 800-year-old letter that she passed down through our line of kings. Our very well could be talking about Cobra here. However, when look at the manner in which all of them are just shook upon hearing this, right? Same level of shook that would come about from Imu saying something like this, because you know this person is entering the room, right? But at the same time, Cobra saying this and them understanding that maybe they let something slip through their hands that they did not keep track of, which is this letter that has been passed down through the generations that maybe they didn't know existed. So either Emu is the one saying this, and that's even scarier considering that this thing that's supposed to be held top secret between each of the kings has made it to Emu. Like, Emu knows even those deepest of darkest of secrets, exclusive to certain countries and certain people. Or it's just Cobra revealing information that they themselves could not believe that made it all the way back from 800 years ago now. I'll leave that up to your interpretation. For now, I'm going to stick with Cobra saying it, but I would love to continue to hear arguments for the fact that this could potentially be Emu saying stuff like this, because I think either scenario is really interesting. But for the sake of the conversation at hand, I'm going to say it's Cobra. And then that Emu's first official lines are Lily. However, once again, open mind, because I think both scenarios are equally interesting. As a matter of fact, I think the Emu scenario is even more interesting, because if Emu's the one that stated this, like I said, to have information that's supposed to be exclusive to a country, for you, oh man, that's crazy. That's crazy. That to me shows true, omniscience in One Piece terms, right? Of like knowing even what you're not supposed to know. That goes beyond, right, what someone like NL would have, where NL, of course, is listening to conversations through mantra. This is someone who's been keeping tracks of an entire country's lineage from 800 years ago until now. That's some scary stuff, man. Some scary, scary stuff. And so I'm super, super excited. Let's get into the comments. Let's start off here with, man, we've got a lot of them this week. Gonna try to get to as many as possible. Bar M comes in and says, love the stream, coach. Had to leave early, but check out the chapter 641 cover story and the flowers next to the bed. Pretty sure those are lily flowers. No wonder Oda didn't leave any author notes. Excuse me, brother, there was no reason for him to, Absolutely no reason for him to. Let me go down here. He was like, yo, actions speak louder than words, man. I believe that was volume 65 with 641. Yeah, it is. 641. 641. What are you? Oh, man. And it shows Cobra, Igaram, and Vivi holding lily flowers. Holding lilies. So you're telling me we now have this cover story and the chapter 1023 reader request that says splitting image with Vivi. Oh, man. Goodness gracious. First and foremost, Bar M, thank you for showing me that. I did not see that chapter 641 cover story from the when I read the chapter until now, so that was really cool. But I appreciate you for being there for the stream, man. It was such an awesome generational stream that we had there, Bar M. Thank you, dude. Holy flagness. If Vivi really was holding lilies right there, man, how far back are we going with this, Oda? Like, how far have you at the very least had this as an idea, right? Because obviously, these are things that get formed through experiences as time goes on. More ideas get, especially for someone like Oda, who has continuous ideas entering his stream of consciousness. But this is an individual who might have had this concept in mind for a very, very long time, and it's very, very exciting. Subra comes in and says, this chapter blows me away every time I read it. I mean, seriously, it's rent-free, Subra. It's rent-free. So many things and callbacks, many thoughts just flooding my brain. This is a once-in-a-lifetime experience, and I'm happy to be a part of this weekly. The fact that in this chapter, we had Charlos get whacked again, which was such a satisfying moment, right? By Sai and Leo and turning into the pot of greed. And that is not my major talking point, because Emu's in the chapter shows you how special this chapter was. It's just everything that it covered. The Sabo and Bonnie stuff, cutting over Cobra and Gorosei conversation, then the Shirahoshi, Leo, Charlos, and Sai stuff, and of course the Emu stuff. It's like, man, just such a well-balanced chapter across the board with so many different things. It was a fantastic chapter. I'll share some of the thoughts that immediately came to my brain. First, I love how Oda started the real Game of Thrones in this chapter. The chapter started with Luffy on the throne and ended with the coldest panel of One Piece, which was Emu on the throne. It was seriously, man. Also, kudos to the guts of Cobra asking the Gorosei directly what B stands for. I couldn't believe my eyes when I saw what he said. Like, I could have expected some certain things from the voice entry, right? Or asking, like, for example, the Lily stuff. That to me makes sense. But asking what the will of D is, son? Oh, bro, I was like, this man is trying to get shot on sight, man. And I guess D stands for death in the case of Cobra, absolutely. Now, the chapter. The ship St. Brice fell from Skypea. Then we see in chapter 220, we see the stat picture of a person who looks just like Vivi. Absolutely. We also see a feather in the treasure box of that ship. These things sure hold importance to this current Lily plot line. I would argue that you are absolutely correct in that regard, which is very, very interesting now that I think about it. When are we going to get to a point where we're going to see what happened with that galleon that fell down from the sky, right? And why it took 800, if you're right, it took 800 years for that thing to fall down. Maybe not necessarily taking 800 years for it to fall, but now I'm interested. I'm actually, if that truly is the case, and then the wrecked ship, right? Oh, man. Food for thought. Food for thought, man. Food for thought. First of all, some major Lily references in Crocodile's introduction. I saw that one. Chapter 641 cover story. Just read that one. And Vivi's room that had lily flowers, which is insane. Now, what does lily flower represents in Greek myth? It represents Hera, the wife of Zeus and the queen of heaven. In Buddhism, it represents rebirth. Also, in some cases, it represents motherhood. So why am I telling this? With all the details in my hands, my theory is Lily. Maybe Luffy... I had to collect myself there for a sec, man. My theory is Lily is maybe Luffy's mother and the last person who had the Opi Opi no Mi, or somehow connected with the immortality surgery. She may or may not be Imu. That's what I can't say. Possibly there's a chance of her being Imu and also Dragon's wife, which is something that's been brought up before. The thing is, people think Rouge's flower is hibiscus, but I just checked and there's a real lily flower, which looks like that may be a coincidence, but Ace's mother has a lily and Luffy's mother too. Another thing from that ship, we got a single treasure from the chest, and it's a feather. Now you'll be amazed at what a feather represents. It represents the wind, guardian angels, and the link to the creator/God. Now if dragon is wind, and the connection to God means Imu, you see where it's going. Definitely. However, it may have been a thematic reference to NL back then, but it's Oda who can say. He originally planned to end One Piece in 5 years, which means Alabasta. And every time I hear like the 5-year thing, to me, like I always tell y'all, the Alabasta Skypea thing represents in Oda's mind, at the very least leading into it before all this stuff started expanding, it felt like Alabasta was going to be the halfway point. Like Alabasta Jaya, halfway point for where the series, maybe in Oda's mind, back whenever he was in the East Blue, was like, okay, I can end it in this amount of time. But I do believe from the moment that Vivi was introduced in Whiskey Peak, from that point on until we got to the Alabasta section, he had a lot of this stuff in mind in regards to not necessarily like the Lily and Emu stuff. I mean, if he did, then that's just wild. That was back in like 1999. But to me, the coolest part about that is, if the series was originally supposed to end in like 5 years, which in his mind, right, would have been Alabasta 2001, 2002. But I think somewhere along the way, all the ideas started coming in, right? And he was just like, hold up, man. This is the halfway point. Because Jaya Alabasta really does feel like it could have been a halfway point if One Piece was way shorter. And so rather than the series ending, of course, at Alabasta, it would have been like Alabasta Jaya leading into it was like, okay, this could be a halfway point for the series. But then things were introduced within those two arcs that forever changed the scope of the series. And I was like, all right, yeah, there's no way this is the halfway point. There's no way. Second thing, a little detail from the dialogue captured, they said the 20 kingdoms while creating the Celestial Dragon system decided not to make a single person rule. Does that mean the Ancient Kingdom was destroyed in a fight for the throne? I mean, it very well could have been, honestly. Or the Ancient Kingdom was dictating over everyone and humans retaliated in order to stop that. That also very well could be the case. Both. Throughout the years of Eden's rule, it turns out to be the evil organization that we see today. It may mean Joy Boy may be the person who's destroyed the Ancient Kingdom in order to create a better world. Maybe we're overthinking, but it came to mind and it's quite interesting to think. So this section on Joy Boy potentially being the person who destroyed the Ancient Kingdom and not Emu in order to create a better world down the line fascinates me, because every single major thing that Oda has created has that one Oda twist in it that none of us see coming. And so, if within the Void Century, one of those twists is that we're all expecting Imu to have been the one to make the world the way that it is, right, by doing whatever needed to be done back then in their eyes. But in actuality, Joy Boy was attempting to do something that he believed was right, that he believed was the correct way to take the planet, that he believed was the correct way to take humanity from that point on. That would be super interesting and very tragic. And I honestly do believe Joy Boy's story is going to be extremely tragic, to the point to where whenever we come out of the Void Century flashback, we're going to see him as like the most tragic character potentially in the entire series. Right? So I could see that. I definitely could see that, Subra. I just realized one funny thing in the anime, we have Lily already. Yeah, in fact, the one from the filler. Lily End Stomach is a giant from Elbaf who first turned Luffy into a giant. The fun thing is, Luffy later became a giant using Gear 5. She's a part of the Z's Ambition arc, which is a prequel to Film Z. Just fun info to have. One last big comment here. Thanks for reading these weekly. Man, we're living the greatest time of our life right now. Have a nice day, brothers. You and the reaction of 10-6 to Xanath week on us, dude. Truly a legendary week, man. I appreciate you as always, Subra. Thank you for the food for thought, man. A lot of really, really interesting comments there. And like you said, that the creation of the 20 kingdoms, there's a lot of room to speculate there. A lot of room. Mist comes in and says, Imu got all-timer, antag potential, man. Instant messenger, Sama. Off presence alone and an introduction, because I love slow character introductions. The fact that we've had 4 chapters dedicated to this individual in 906, 908, 1060, and 1084, all memorable for their own reasons. And the character just continues to get more and more interesting as more is revealed about them. It's like, man, absolutely peak. The potential is there for one of the all-time greatest characters. Easy. I need Oda to cook with the reveal and design. Oh, that's going to be so wild. I can't even imagine what the character's going to look like because I'm so used to seeing them as a silhouette. Also, I wonder how they set up my boy Sabo so fast with that one picture of him standing over Cobra. Was Cameron ready? Dude, seriously. Seriously, yo. Interesting to think about how Imu used the sword to cut up Luffy, Blackbeard, and Shiroshi's pictures in chapter 108, but she didn't do anything to Vivi's, and that sword might be the final missing sword of the 20 for the Kingdom of Alabasta. Absolutely. We were talking about that on stream where that final sword could be that one sword that was missing to complete the 20, but it was left behind within Imu's throne room, and that potentially could lead into the story between Imu, Lily, if they're not the same person, and Joy Boy and Zunisha, and how all that's going to connect, right? Which, man, another peak chapter, another golden stream. I really appreciate you, my guy. Also, the gifted subs have been crazy. Dude, the gifted subs this year have been wild missed, man. Wild, wild, wild. Shout out to all the ghosts doing that amazing community, man. Dude, our community is the absolute best, man. Absolute best. I appreciate you, miss, man. Thank you. It's been a crazy time. Shadow comes in and says, I think Imu isn't Lily, due to the fact that Lily left a letter behind which seems contradictory to what Imu would want. Instead, I think Lily's letter will be addressed next chapter, and I think her letter will include Joy Boy and the Will of D. Let me tell you something, Shadow. I am so down for the letter being discussed by Imu and Cobra with a discussion on Joy Boy and the Will of D. That would give us so much to go off of for a very long time on Imu. The way that Imu reacts to the name Joy Boy, whether Imu's the one who brings up the title and follows a few things up with that, or more on the Will of D, like the closest we'll ever get, or not will ever, but for quite some time until we get to the Void Century flashback itself, on what the Will of D actually is, right? The biggest hint, Cobra will ask Imu if Luffy is Joy Boy, which will anger Imu so much that she kills him on the spot. I do wonder if something like that is what happens with Cobra. I think both Sabo and Vivi will see this, which is going to be insane. That's leading to both of them knowing about the letter and Lily's words. So Sabo will send Vivi off to go back to join the crew, and then we'll go back to Egghead, where the last major reveal will be the Ancient Kingdom name. I love that idea, because I do believe the Ancient Kingdom's name will be revealed in Egghead. At this point, I think we've spent so much of this time building up Void Century stuff within Egghead. Now that we're seeing Imu, we're seeing this conversation take place, it may very well end up being the thing that we were talking about over on Dax stream, where one of the final chapters in this arc, whenever St. J. Garcia Saturn and Luffy are in front of each other, whether it's Garcia Saturn that brings it up, whether it's Robin that brings it up, Vegapunk, Dragon, someone brings it up, the name of the ancient kingdom, and we'll be leaving Egghead Island with that context in our minds. Like, this is the name of the ancient flippin' kingdom, man. Thus meaning we get Joy Boy and the Will of D teased with the ancient kingdom's name revealed in the same arc. Peak fiction, Shadow. Peak fiction. Essentially making Egghead a tease of what's to come. Precisely, and that's exactly what we've been seeing so far. There's a lot of like final saga insanity really inciting all the stuff we'll be seeing down the line, you know, setting a lot of it up, also getting a lot of major payoff for being longtime fans as well. But I love this because, right, I'm split towards the Emu being Lily thing and Emu being connected to Lily due to companionship, whatever the case may be. I think there's a lot of really cool ideas there. But the idea of the letter being addressed next chapter, as well as the ancient kingdom being revealed and within the same arc as a Joy Boy and Will of D tease, I'm down for that. I mean, anything that gets Emu to talk a little bit about the Void Sentry is going to be so much. So much, man. That's going to be some stuff we're going to be talking about for a very long time. And so I really hope that's the case, Shadow. Thank you. Arend comes in and says, very long read ahead. I think Lily's character may just as Vivi be closely be connected to Oda's inspiration about the Nefertari family in relation to Queen Nefertari from one of the Egyptian dynasties. Queen Nefertari, the one for whom the sun shines. That's such a cool title. She was known with many titles. A few of them were Sovereign of all the land, God's wife. She was known also for her contribution to ceasing the hostility between Egypt and the Hittites Empire with her peace letters. The result of these letters was a treaty of universal and perpetual peace called the Treaty of Kadesh. So these letters as well could be inspired by the actual individual, are also known as the Eternal Treaty, which Oda may consider an idea/dream/role fitting for a character like Vivi. This opens the possibility of her joining the Strats with that dream in mind, not being exclusive to stopping a conflict only in Alabasta anymore. Get your mind blown with this last bit. Biography, royalty, Nefertiti. Shout out to Musa Hassim for adding this in Roger's comments and chapter reaction. The other civilization the Egyptians fought against is the one of this interesting article I found called the Hittites, a civilization lost and found. Ooh. Where it mentions that this great nation not only disappeared from history, it was lost and forgotten so completely that historians of the 19th century even denied its existence. Oh, wait a minute, Arend! The amount of inspiration Oda has taken from these two civilizations speaks for itself. I believe Lily opposed the manipulation of Emu and fake intentions when establishing the world government and escaped before Emu could retaliate. Possibly arriving at Amazon Lily, and the other connection with Lily's name and to Boa, since Nefertari was known as the most beautiful, could be a stretch or a very nice coincidence. However, Cleopatra's use of her beauty is closer to Boa's character, so Egyptian history possible inspirations come again. Back in Fisherman Island, we heard from the Sea Kings that the two rulers will meet again one day. And I was thinking about this on stream, man, making a reference to the sun god, Joy Boy, Luffy, the god of the sea, Poseidon, Shiroshi. Sea Kings also said that it is going to work this time. Could they have had conflicts with each other in the past and in the end joined forces? I think they hold a secret about the role of Emu having control over land and wishing to have even more over sea and maybe even the sky, but conflicting with Joy Boy's freedom. Other people have already theorized about Emu being inspired by the earth goddess Gaia, the mother of Uranus, and I think the pieces fit based in the history behind her antagonizing heavenly gods. Bro, Arend, you have blown my mind with this article. The other civilization the Egyptians fought against is one that this interesting article I found called the Hittites, a civilization lost and found, where it mentions that this great nation not only disappeared from history, it was lost and forgotten so completely that historians of the 19th century even denied its existence, man. And the strong connection to the Egyptians, which so clearly have inspired the Nefertari family and the whole stuff with Alabasta. That is so cool, Arend, man. I'm definitely gonna have to, in my spare time, read that biography for the Nefertari family, for sure. Like the real family and the real queen, right? For Nefertiti. That is so dope, Arend. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. That actually just blew my mind. Great News comes in with an awesome Shizuna profile picture. Hey coach, here's some of my thoughts. Lily can also be read as Lily In ancient Egypt, the blue flower lily represents immortality. And the ancient god that represents the blue lily in the Egyptian mythology also carries a very weird-shaped crown on his head. Oh, interesting. The fact that Imu-sama was always in a room surrounded by flowers also points to the evidence that she is Queen Lily herself. If you pay attention to the panel where the silhouette of Queen Lily is revealed, don't you think it's weird that Oda decided to hide her crown in King Cobra's dialogue bottle? That's a good point. That's a good point. If you pay attention to the panel where the silhouette of Queen Lily is revealed, don't you think it's weird that Oda decided to hide her crown in King Cobra's dialogue bubble? That's a great point, Genius. Great point. Could just be a red herring, but that is a great point. But the question is, how did she achieve immortality? It has to be the Opi no Mi. Do you think it was the use of the Opi no Mi immortality operation? It would have to be. What do you think it was that what do you think was Queen Lily's relationship with Joy Boy? That's been the thing I've been thinking about the past couple days, right? With the Queen Lily Joy Boy thing, obviously it's been talked about like potential lover, stuff of that nature. But for me, I'm more so along the lines of like former companion, and not necessarily like a Zunisha. I feel like Zunisha and Joy Boy, like Zunisha is like, I'm trying to figure out like what to compare it to within like the One Piece series. I feel like Zunisha could have been like what Momonosuke is to Luffy, whereas I feel like Queen Lily could be kind of like what Nami is to Luffy, or Robin is to Luffy. Someone who is extremely close to Luffy, right? Like very, very close. A member of the squad, squad. Zunisha, I'm not sure if it was in Joy Boy's squad as well, or was a companion in regards to like a Momonosuke, right? Who was along for the journey for quite some time and then went off to do their own thing. I'm not necessarily sure, but I do think that based on potential parallels with Vivi, I think Queen Lily was probably traveling around with Joy Boy for a while, which would be so goated, so goated. And so, obviously, because it's One Piece, I'm not sure if we'll take the romance approach. So that would be my line of thought: is the two of them sailing out on the seas, her learning a lot about the world through being on this journey with Joy Boy. But the thing is like I still don't know, because we've seen Joy Boy's influence in the sky, on the surface, and then below the sea as well. We've seen how the sun god is revered and all. So he had to have he had to have been able to make his way all over the place. So if he made his way all over the place, he had to have been with other individuals, and I'm going to assume that Queen Nefeltari had to have been one of those individuals with him, which means Lily and Joy Boy potentially could be considered extremely close just based on that. But I wonder, I really wonder, and it would be so cool. It would be another layer for the flashback that would just elevate it even more than what we were all initially anticipating for it to be. So those are my thoughts on that. About that, y'all, man. Greatly apologize. I only have time for a few more. Gold Slash comes in and says, sorry to miss the stream, but what a chapter, coach. Dude, what a chapter, man. Shout out Leo and Sai from Murking Charlos. I hope he really did get sent to the HFIL. It's weird to think that all along we thought Vivi's family were the solid ones. Her and Cobra are legit good people. However, it seems clear to me that this Lily character is either Imu or started that family line, which is insane if that's the case, man. She was the only ruler to not make a vow to take over the world. Vivi might possibly look like how she used to, reminding her of her time with the OG Joy Boy. And that's such a good point. If Lily truly is Lily, right? If Lily is Instant Messenger Sama, it's like, man, looking at Luffy and Vivi on their journey must have been like, man, that brings back memories, you know? It seems that the Nefertari family is more nefarious than we originally thought. Will Imu tell Cobra about the will of D, or perhaps even Imu doesn't understand it? I think the Phantom Room was where Imu was cutting up all the pictures of Luffy, Blackbeard, and Shirahoshi. That's what we were talking about earlier, Gold Slash, and that very well could be the case, right? Bonnie and Sabo interaction are dope to see. Love that section of the chapter. I said it before, and I still believe that when we cut back to Egghead, Zoro will be the one that finds Bonnie, and I think that would be great. He's the straw that interacted the most with Bonnie and Kuma prior to Egghead. I'm starting to miss Luffy in the straw, so man has Oda been cooking. Peak fiction. It's like, yo, only this series, where the main characters are so beloved, are we okay with cutting away for a while to see all this stuff happening around the world. That's how insane it is, man. But thank you, Gold Slash. I appreciate you. Jesus Vermilion comes in and says, I was on the edge of my seat during the Cobra dialogue with the Gorosei. Dude, straight chills, man. The weird thing about Emu is that even I have always linked the character to Vivi in some way. Back when I was originally going through some of the candidates who could have been Emu, I always thought of Nefertari Titi, which is Vivi's mom. And dude, I had the same exact thought process, Jesus. The thing is, I cast the speculation aside simply due to how old Emu most likely is, but I'm still surprised that I was apparently onto something there. For real. I do not believe Lily is Emu, but she obviously has something to do with him / her, 100%. Either way, right? Whether Lily is Instant Messenger Sama or was related to them in some way, shape, or form, obviously, if the very first word stated by a character as important as Emu is Lily, there's a connection there. Whether Emu is a past lover, a friend seeking revenge, or a cruel villain with deep respect for his past enemies, which I can most... Oh man, that'd be so raw. I can't tell. With the lilies in the garden and the frozen straw hat possibly being a commemoration for Lily and Joy Boy, 100%. 100%, Jesus. But I will say the biggest problem with thinking of a concrete theory is that we still have so many things to connect until things start finally making sense. And that's why whenever the interviewers asked Oda about, Emu and... tell us who Emu is, Oda was like, it would just be boring if I told you, because it's something that we still need to get more of the puzzle pieces, right? We can't put it all together without receiving some more context and some more clues, right? So that we can really start piecing this mystery together to come up with more concrete answers. It's clearly why Oda said revealing Emu's identity. Literally exactly what you said. We were connected there. I'm sure once we do find out and connect everything, it'll be completely worth it. 100%. Thank you, Coach, for another banger stream. Dude, nothing but love to you, Jesus, man. Seriously. Love all of you. Keep up the great work, and let's hope in the next 2 weeks we get completely mind broken. It's going to be wild, Jesus. Like, it's going to be so wild, man. But thank you, dog. Hank comes in and says, I agree with you, Coach. This chapter is going to be up there in the top 5 of the year. And, yo, it's crazy because I feel like by the end of this year, we're going to be saying that a lot more often, right? But this really does feel like one of those chapters. Unless the next chapter is this on steroids, then that chapter will replace this chapter. But this chapter was really special. Like, across the board, it was just so good. Great character interactions. The incredible moment with Leo and Sai and Miosgard. Shout out to Goatman Miosgard. And, of course, backing Charlos up into the pot of greed. On top of the Cobra and Gorosei stuff. On top of the Sabo and Bonnie craziness. Emu. It's like all of the... Every single page in this chapter was awesome. It's just one of those chapters. So I feel like it might end up remaining in the top 5 for the rest of the year. But knowing how crazy the rest of the year is going to be, if based on what we've gotten so far at the beginning, it's like, man, I can't even imagine. I can't wait for these next 2 weeks to pass by because I hope we get to see more of the splashback. Me too. My main thought is how Cobra is going to be killed. Will it be Emu, one of the Gorosei, one of the God's Knights? It's like, that's true. Is it going to be one of the God's Knights that does it? Is it going to be one of the Gorosei that's like, alright, we've had enough, take him out? Or Emu themselves taking out Cobra? Like, man, Emu moving to catch a body? I'm curious if Sabo ends up seeing who kills Cobra, and if it goes beyond. That's a good point. Seeing Emu sitting on the throne. I'm excited to hear your thoughts on this, what the next chapter has in store for us. Thanks for doing these lives. I always enjoy watching your reactions and getting to be able to discuss with everyone. It's honestly one of the highlights of my week. I'm glad you feel the same way, Hank. It's definitely one of my highlights of the week as well. It's the most fun, man, just doing the lives now, discussing it as it happens with all of you. It's just, it's so much fun, and to know that you're having as much fun as I am is so cool. So shout out to you, Hank. Thank you so much for the kind words, for being here. But just in regard to how Cobra is going to be killed, I'm really starting to lean more towards it's going to be Emu, especially if we get further and further into this conversation. If it's one of the Holy Knights, then of course that serves to hype them up a little more before we get some more official introductions on them. If it's one of the Gorosei, we're going to get an opportunity to see one of them once again kill someone and then act extremely remorseful about it and even feel a little bit of guilt for it too, as we've seen throughout the course of the series up until this point. So I think that'd be really cool to see that happening in real time with Emu being directly in front of them, challenging how they may feel on the inside, right? Like, oh man, the great Emu just delivered this order, but normally I have time to prepare and deal with this because you're still taking out the life of a human being. So it's like, if one of the Gorosei members is forced to do that before the others, it's like, how would they react? I think that's a very interesting scenario. Or Emu just directly taking out Cobra, catching every single person there off guard, and be like, Great Emu, do you understand what you just did? Sabo and Vivi's reactions to that, it's like, either all three scenarios work really well, but Emu moving to do the deed would be one of the biggest moments in the series for sure, because it is the potential final antagonist taking somebody out before our eyes, and this is just a couple chapters after destroying all of Lucia with that Uranus type of thing. Well, speaking of Uranus, before we wrap up here, there was another comment that talked about Uranus that I thought was very interesting. Here it is. Franco Casahuaman comes in and says, maybe Uranus is connected to the Nefertari family, and that's why Emu ordered Lily to be killed and marked Vivi's photo. And that very well could be the case, like another ancient weapon that is connected to one of the families in the verse. Obviously, we know the Kosugi clan and Pluton, Poseidon, right, down there with Shiroshi and the squad in the Hiryugu castle. But potentially Uranus could be connected to the Nefertari family, which is extremely interesting. We all believe that Uranus was probably going to end up being connected to the Lunarians or someone from the sky, right? Considering that this is an ability that that appears to be very prevalent in the sky. But at the same time, if what was stated earlier is true, and like what Subaru was talking about, and let's just say Lily leaving Alabasta, never making it back, but she still has Uranus with her. Let's just hypothetically speaking, right? If it did belong to the Nefertaris back then she takes that thing with her up there to Skypiea, and of course, due to whatever takes place, Emu ends up getting control back of it. This is once again hypothetically speaking that Emu and Lily are not the same person. But if they're different people, I would not put it out of the realm of possibility that Lily potentially and Uranus have like a connection there, right? As one of those ancient weapons, especially if it took place in the sky, knowing if potentially the individual that we saw back in chapter 220 is Lily, then it's like, okay, then we start putting those pieces together. We start with the ship coming down and stuff of the nature. So to me, even though my brain is halfway walloped after this entire week, it's like, if that ends up being the case, Uranus connected to the whole family, man? What does that mean for the end game of the series? Imagine Emu brings out Uranus like it's the winged dragon of Ra. It's like, this once belonged to your people, and now it's mine. Or if Emu is Lily brings out the winged dragon of Ra, aka Uranus, and it's just like, yeah, this is the legendary weapon that was supposed to be passed down between all of your generations, but it's mine. Like, that junk would be crazy, dude. I'm telling you. Praetorus comes in and says, so many theories, but I can't even think about the will of Deer M being revealed next chapter. That's the thing, right? We're still in the middle of Egghead Island. Will we really see such a major reveal? Such as, I mean, the will of D definitely not. That to me is Void Century stuff. But M being revealed next chapter, to me, is like, it's such a scary possibility, because I've continued throughout the final saga to say, this is not going to happen, this is not going to happen, and we get those things. So it's like, granted, this is potentially the final antagonist of the series, the king of the world, who is here before us, right? And we're going to need that context going into the final saga of who this individual potentially is. But I've just been trying to think about why Oda would reveal this character this early on in the final saga, or at the very least not wait until a post Egghead chapter, because it feels like it would deserve something like that, right? But at the same time, we're in the middle of the final saga. If Emu gets revealed here, it will be for a purpose. Will of D, definitely not. Emu, I can see, though. I can see Emu being revealed. I really can. I really can. Considering how long we've been having this Reverie flashback cooking, I could see Emu potentially being revealed next chapter, or at the very least, giving us the closest hint to who Emu is. by the time the Sabo gets into that room. Definitely. Instead, Charlos has me thinking we get a great character moment for Sabo on the way out of the situation. Exactly where he might run into Jalmak, the Slush Dragon who blew up his ship and took him away from Ace and Luffy all those years ago. And if we get another one of those, like we did with Mealsguard and Fish and the Fishman, oh, dude, inject that. With Mealsguard, Oda has set up a future for the inhabitants of Marijoa that isn't just getting hit in the face. Yes, and it may even run contrary to the Revolutionary Army agenda. If Sabo runs into him, depending on what he's like and how Sabo responds, it could have even more endgame implications than Im. That's a great point. With the pace recently, though, we might not see something like that till next time we have a run-in with the Celestials. That's a good point as well, Praetor. It's like, you really can't call it when it comes to what Oda is doing within the final saga. He really just might say that for next time. But, I think another Mealscar type of situation where things come full circle, but this time with Sabo and someone like Jalmak, I think would be so cool. I think that would not only hit extremely hard depending on the way that it would go, but like you said, for Sabo's character, it would lead us down the path of where Sabo's character would need to go to get from point A to end of series Sabo. That's how big that interaction between those two would be if they were to have that happen here. Because Sabo getting to that room and getting out of that room is going to present a few very, very interesting scenarios, right? Like, obviously, we're all in agreement that Sabo and Vivi are going to meet up at some point in time after this Vivi-Lucci confrontation. So it's like, okay, Sabo somewhere along the way is going to, Bonnie's going to go her own way, and instead he's going to be walking into that room with Vivi, right? Or they both show up at the same time, whatever the case may be. Regardless, getting to that room, though, potentially getting into the flower chamber or wherever it is that, whichever one the lost chamber is, whether it's the flower chamber or the one with the giant straw hat is, I'm going to assume one of the Holy Knights is going to be there. And so that's another interesting interaction that would potentially happen, where we could see potentially like a member of the Figureland family having a conversation with Sabo, which would be huge. One for Sabo's characters, the ones you just said, right, with Jalmak. So there's a few different interesting scenarios for Sabo to have interesting conversations before he gets to that room that very well could end up being the reason, like that conversation taking place could end up being the reason why he doesn't make it on time to Cobra, right? And it's like, we as the readers would be like, man, he needed to have that conversation, but if he didn't have the conversation, Cobra wouldn't have died, and we're going to be left like that with that type of like, was it worth it type of thing, right? That'd be an interesting route to go down. But Praetors, thank you as always for your comments. SK comes in, says my crackpot theory. What time is it? All right, we'll go for I think 2 more. My crackpot theory: Emu has a devil fruit kind of like Sugar's fruit, but instead of turning people into toys, it turns people into animals. Interesting. Joy Boy's old crew was turned into Sea Kings. Ooh. And Lily was turned into Lily being turned into Zunisha is fascinating. We talked about that on stream. We don't know if the timeline connects, right? From 1,900 years ago to Queen Lily of 800 years ago. It doesn't really align, but the idea of Emu being able to potentially turn these old crew members into Sea Kings, and that being why all of them communicate with each other, are waiting for the promised day. I think that's very interesting, especially because I personally believe that there's some good weight behind potential individuals residing within some of these fruits, or at the very least their souls residing within some of these fruits, right? Like the Nika no Mi, for example. So if that's the case and something like that is possible, then why not, for one of them turning into an animal like a Sea King, or Zunisha formerly being a human and now being turned into the mammoth lad that we know him as. It's like, that's very interesting. When they turn into animals, the world forgets about them. The Dressrosa plotline, just like the world forgets about the toys. Emu wanted to marry Lily, but she refused. So going on the romantic plotline, that very well could end up being the case, honestly. But the whole thing about a fruit being similar to the sugar ability, that would explain why a lot of the world does not remember what took place back then. Of course, they weren't alive back then. But even the individuals who were alive at the time, it would allow for a true reset if all of them were turned into, other things, right? That and animals, or like sea kings, or whatever the case may be, and everybody forgets about them. But of course, these individuals that were transformed, they don't forget about the others. Similar to how Zunisha has never forgotten about his about the promise that he has to fulfill, right? The destination he has to make it to, the punishment that he's still carrying out. So, never heard that idea before, SK. That's actually really, really interesting. Very, very interesting. Matthias Ciruli comes in and says, this chapter was absolute madness. There's no way Charles is still alive, but the title of the chapter says attempted murder. That's a good point. That's a good point. King Cobra deserved to die. Why would you ask those questions? The man was, bro, like, seriously, man. That was on some, that was Luffy levels of I don't care, of zero fear. About the two sovereigns, could I be referring to Shiroshi and Vivi instead of Luffy? I've been thinking about this since I read that chapter. Now that Queen Nefeltari was referred to as a sovereign. Pictures of both of them were in instant master someone's possession, along the king and the man himself. Exactly. I don't care what anyone says, but Morley, Solo, Greenbull, and Karasu is boxing with one hand while talking to the phone. Karasu, high key, is extremely nasty. How are you boxing an admiral and talking on the phone at the same time? That is filthy. Thank you, Matthias. I appreciate you. Go ahead and read. Derek of Rivia comes in and says, to think that Sai and Leo crushing a celestial dragon in their homeland is not the great incident of historic proportions. Bro, the thing is, though, we still don't know the repercussions of that, right? We don't know if the Grand Fleet is currently being chased because of what took place here. We don't know. That very well could end up being the case. Could you imagine how it's going to be quadrupled? If they did that, they're on the run, and if Luffy bunches a Gorosei member, oh man, the entire fleet is going to be hunted down to the depths of the earth. You feel me? So that very well could lead into a lot of this stuff. Reference chapter 800. The hype for that incident is only getting bigger and better because we know it'll be crazy than anything we've seen up to that point. Before we go to Egghead, I would be shocked if I would not be shocked if we see fleet members going to Egghead because they were tipped off of the Marines' attack and/or knew the newspaper was a lie when Morgans wrote the Luffy hit piece. Great point. Side note, then two sovereigns will end up being Vivi and Shirahoshi, the two princesses. I love that idea. Especially after the most recent chapter. It's had me thinking about the whole sovereigns thing. Kosh Panda says, Charles got sent back to the manga by Luffy, took a Thunderbago to the face from Miosgard, took a continent-splitting drill dragon nail attack to his head, and is still alive. Charlos durable. There's no one with higher durability than Charlos. I can promise you that. You're not going to find it. You are not going to find it, man. Like, you are not going to find someone with higher durability than Saint Charlos, Akash Panda, seriously. Final comment here. Emma M comes in and says, I wanted to point out that Sabo being able to summon Karasu's crow via some suit he kept with him is a pretty insane ability. 100%. Really hyping up how powerful the Revolutionary Me is. And it's really cool. Like, I'm glad that they're getting a similar treatment that the Sword members got just recently, where we're really seeing how awesome they can actually be. And how much of a threat they can be as well, because that's very important. Can't wait for more applications of the suit fruit. In regards to Imu and Lily, I feel like they have to be different people considering their parallel to Vivi, not making it home after the reverie. Great point, I didn't even think about that. Lily never made it home to her kingdom and was never heard from again. This is some wiggle room. There is some wiggle room as to what the relationship was. Maybe lovers, but what if using the Opie fruit, Imu had Lily soul swapped, like in Punk Hazard, and then had the immortality instilled, leaving Imu in Lily's immortal body. Oh, Emma, I love that idea. Using the Opie no Mi, Imu had Lily's soul swapped, takes over the body, and remains in Lily's immortal body. I love that idea, dude. Oh man, and that would like allow me to look back at that section of Punk Hazard and be like, this is what this was for. When Oda introduced this switch concept, or at the very least, whenever he introduced the switch concept, it was like, okay, this is now something I can play around with later on the line. Man, Law's ability, dude, coming in with that level of importance and multiple different variations of its ability. Oh man, I love that idea, Emma. Seriously. Lastly, do you think we get a voice entry flashback before or after Egghead arc ends? For me personally, I think it's going to come after. I do, unless Garcia Saturn starts up a voice entry flashback himself with potentially like Robin there, or something a piece of the Void Century flashback has to be stated through the likes of Vegapunk, or whether the Punk records is how all of us find out about the Void Century. I don't know. I always felt like the Void Century was going to be discovered whenever we get to Laugh Tale. That was always my assumption, and so especially after the Roger flashback. So it's like, if we get that information beforehand, I wonder what that would mean for what we would feel about the things we see on Laugh Tale. Because then we're going to go into it with the context of knowing what the Void Century is. Not arriving, seeing the Void Century stuff, and also getting the One Piece at the same time. Who knows? Who knows? It could be very different, right? Like, maybe the reason why we got the Roger flashback at that time is because it's not going to be a one-to-one thing from here on out. Where Roger saw the Void Century stuff and the Will of D stuff and all that stuff at one point in time while arriving at Laugh Tale. Maybe for us, it'll be sprinkled out throughout the course of the final saga, where we actually find out the Void Century very, very soon. Who knows? That'd actually be crazy. I'm not gonna lie. Where we go into the final saga with the context of the Void Century, and not necessarily have to wait until we get to Laugh Tale to get the Void Century flashback. For now, I'm gonna say after Egghead. But if we get it before the end of Egghead, then that means there are strong implications for how important that flashback is going to be for understanding just how massive this final saga conflict is going to end up being, right? It depends on how Oda wants to play it out. Does he want to keep us in the present and have everything happening with Emu and the Revolutionary Army and all that stuff be how things take place for now, and then add that additional weight down the line with the Void Century flashback the way he normally does with his arcs? Or does he want to provide that context right away at the beginning of the final saga? I'm going to say after the Egghead arc ends, but man, before it would be crazy, Emma. Before it would be crazy. And do you think Oda will follow this Reverie flashback through to the end, or will we cut back to Egghead after this break? I do think we're going to see at the very least Sabo walking into the room. Regardless of whether we see him or not, we're going to see Sabo and Vivi walk into that room. If we cut back to Egghead after this, that would mean that Oda's saving this for the end of the arc, which is very, very spooky. But right now, I'm going to say we cut back end of next chapter, or at next chapter just in general, and we see the end of the flashback. And then we come back to the Egghead Island craziness. But if he goes back to Egghead after this recent cliffhanger, oh man, that's going to be crazy. That would mean Oda's cooking something astronomical from when we get back to the Reverie. Oh man. Appreciate your dedication to the community. I can't wait to catch the next live. Absolutely, Emma, yo. I appreciate you. Thanks so much for the awesome comment. Y'all, thank you so much. I really wish I had the time to read more, but this is all I'm going to have to... this is the time I've been dealt with today. And, but man, what a couple of awesome, really, really good comments, dude. Great food for thought. Incredible possibilities and scenarios. And, you know, we really, really needed this considering we're heading into a week with no chapter. Or we're just going to have this chapter in our minds, thinking about what could happen in 1085. It's going to be sweaty. It's going to be crazy. I really, really can't wait for it. And I already know Final Saga Odie. That's how you know my brain is fried. Final Saga Oda is going to be cooking on all cylinders. So I will see you all next time. Have an awesome day. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out. Lily, yo.